Welcome to this webcast introducing the IFRS Sustainability Disclosure Taxonomy. I'm Tim Kasim, technical staff, and I'm joined by Lloyd, Vice Chair of the ISSB. To start us off, Sue, would you please explain why the ISSB is creating the taxonomy?
Sure, but before I do that, let me start by saying a big thank you to you, Tim, and to the taxonomy team, also the board members who've worked really closely on this, and also our advisory group, the IFRS Taxonomy Consultative Group. It's really fabulous that we've published this taxonomy and we've done it on a timely basis. So back to your question. Our main objective for creating the taxonomy is to facilitate investors' use of sustainability-related financial disclosures that are prepared using our standards, IFRS S1 and IFRS S2. So when we developed the ISSB standards, we set an objective to create a digital taxonomy to enable digital comparability and analysis of the sustainability-related financial disclosures that are prepared when companies use our standards. So I'm really delighted that we've fulfilled that objective of digital reporting right from the start. And what we're seeking to do here is exactly what the IASB does with the IFRS accounting taxonomy. So it's enabling information provided using the standards published by the Standard Setting Board to be made available in a digital form in a way that makes the information computer readable and that enables attributes of the information to be efficiently communicated to the market.
Before we delve into the detail, Sue, can you give our listeners a brief overview of the benefits of digital financial reporting?
Sure, so I'll highlight a few points. Firstly, we know that the digital consumption of information is hugely important. An obvious benefit is greater efficiency with how investors can extract, analyse and compare the information. And in addition, investors can benefit from accessing an expanded population of possible global investment targets. And there's benefits for companies too that are preparing the information. Because digital financial reporting can improve capital market efficiency and transparency, companies can benefit from having increased visibility in the markets that can result in increased analyst coverage and access to capital, including foreign investment. And from a regulatory perspective, regulators also can use digital financial reports as a tool to efficiently oversee and monitor the markets. This will help ensure that investors are receiving decision-useful information and that the capital markets consume this information efficiently.
Okay, now let's talk about the nuts and bolts of digital financial reporting. Sue, would you please explain how the ISSB is trying to facilitate the digital reporting of sustainability-related financial disclosures?
Sure. So the ISSB issued its inaugural standards, IFRS S1 and S2 in June last year. And now we're issuing the ISSB Taxonomy that essentially accompanies those standards. It's a digital taxonomy for tagging sustainability information that's prepared in accordance with the standards. So all that the taxonomy does is essentially make the information prepared in accordance with those standards available in a digital form in a standardized way. So it's essential to clarify what we mean by taxonomy in this context. The term taxonomy can be a bit confusing in the sustainability space, as green taxonomies also exist for other purposes. Here we're talking about a digital taxonomy that companies can use for digitally tagging the information they prepare in accordance with the ISSB standards. In layman's terms, the taxonomy facilitates the provision of IFRS information in a digital form. So let's bring it down a level to help listeners maybe to connect the dots. Tim, can you give a practical example?
Certainly. So consider this example. We are dealing with 5 different companies, each disclosing its Scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions applying the requirements of ISSB standards. Reading through the disclosures, I can understand that they are about Scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions, except for those provided in foreign languages that I cannot understand. But all of these nuances are lost to computers. By tagging the disclosure using a tag provided in the taxonomy, the computer can accurately identify that these disclosures are about Scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions, including those provided in foreign languages. The process of tagging enables investors to automate the extraction of exact data points. Imagine being able to compare Scope 1 data not just from 5 but 50,000 companies with a few clicks.
Also importantly, this example demonstrates how the taxonomy is designed to support investors' use of sustainability-related financial disclosures prepared using our standards. It doesn't introduce any new requirements, and to be clear, its use is not a condition for compliance with the ISSB standards.
So, can you briefly explain to our listeners about how you expect the taxonomy to be used by jurisdictions that have decided to adopt ISSB standards, and even for those still considering?
Yeah, I'll take a step back and start with our standards, if that's okay. So our objectives with the ISSB standards is to provide a global baseline of information that's comparable across markets. And that objective is achieved from a regulatory perspective when jurisdictions choose to use or develop standards informed by our standards. So the taxonomy is available for use really in the same way. Our objective is to support jurisdictions to reap the full benefit of using our standards by facilitating global comparability of digital sustainability-related financial disclosures prepared in accordance with our standards. A jurisdiction that adopts our standards can just directly use the ISSB taxonomy. And a jurisdiction that adopts and builds on requirements on top of our standards can use our taxonomy and then add on additional disclosure requirements. So it's really developed to support this global baseline. In developing the taxonomy, we've also thought hard about interoperability with other taxonomies where it's necessary. So for example, in the case of Europe, where they started before us with our standards, we've focused on interoperability of the ISSB standards and the European IFRS standards, and next we'll be looking at interoperability of digital taxonomies. So we intend our digital taxonomies to work in a way that really supports interoperability between the ISSB and ISRS standards, including to ensure that investors can identify the ISSB's global baseline.
Another exciting aspect is the fact that the taxonomy can be used together with the taxonomies that companies already use today for tagging their financial statements. Would you please talk through this a bit more?
Sure. So our objective here is to facilitate holistic digital financial reporting that enables investors to use accounting and sustainability information in a digital format. So how did we do that? So to start with, we made sure that our taxonomy design is consistent with the IFRS accounting taxonomy developed by our sister board, the IASB. We use the same general policies, design and structure as the IFRS accounting taxonomy, which means that stakeholders who are familiar with that accounting taxonomy will have a head start when they look at the IFRS sustainability disclosure taxonomy. At the same time, because the ISSB standards are designed to be used both by companies who use the IFRS accounting standards, but also those who use other GAAP, we wanted to make sure that the taxonomy could be used with other GAAP taxonomies. So we've developed the taxonomy as a distinct and separate taxonomy so it can be used together with other GAAP taxonomies. So now let's get into some more specifics. Digital taxonomies have existed for a long time, but we've also introduced some innovative approaches in developing this new taxonomy. So Tim, could you perhaps briefly summarise some of the key features of the ISSB taxonomy?
Sure, and I'll try to keep it brief. So I'll start with tagging narrative disclosures, which is a relatively new and important task. And we thought really hard in identifying the most granular level, whereby a chunk of narrative information is expected to be separately understandable and readily identifiable. Hence, useful for investors, but also not too onerous for preparers. I'm also really excited about the categorical elements, which will exponentially improve efficiencies in analyzing information by layering textual data with structured data format where appropriate. So for example, for some disclosures, identifying whether the response to a disclosure requirement is true or false. Another highlight is the reflection of the relationship between IFRS S1 and IFRS S2. As those familiar with the standards will know, there are many aspects of the requirements in S1 and S2 taken from the TCFD recommendations that are common to both standards. So we thought really hard about how to make the process of tagging and analyzing information that meets those corresponding requirements in S1 and S2 as efficient as possible, and to reduce the need for double tagging. And the solution we identified will enable investors to analyze information efficiently and at the same time to be able to filter by the particular risk or opportunity. So for example, identifying information about climate-related risks and opportunities. Lastly, metrics and targets. The modeling is straightforward but very important to ensure investors can separately extract, compare and analyze each metric included in IFRS S2. For topics beyond climate, IFRS S1 enables other sources of guidance to be used for disclosures. For metrics taken from another source, we encourage companies to use other available taxonomies because it would help investors to identify comparable information in a digital format. So for example, we encourage companies to use the ISSB taxonomy for tagging metrics taken from the ISSB standards that are used to meet the requirements of IFRS S1.
Okay, thanks. And I know that the team has really benefited from the expertise of the team that developed the ISSB taxonomy, and that the team worked hard to ensure that the ISSB taxonomy will work well with the ISSB taxonomy.
And people ask us a lot about connectivity in the work of the IASB and ISSB. So perhaps it would be good to talk a bit about how that has worked for this taxonomy.
Yes, connectivity. So we're very fortunate at the IFRS Foundation to have both the IASB and the ISSB, which means that we're really uniquely placed to work together for the benefit of those preparing information and also for investors. And this is true for digital financial reporting. So to maximise this synergy, we used consistent taxonomy design, which we've already talked about, and we have a common taxonomy team that's supporting the work of both of the boards. And we have a common advisory group that's in fact co-chaired by a member of the IASB and a member of the ISSB. We also have common educational materials for supporting the use of the digital taxonomies of both the boards. So the connectivity in these processes has ensured that we've got good connectivity between the digital taxonomies of the IASB and the ISSB, which we've been talking about. And it also enables us to deliver holistic digital financial reporting to investors, which is what's really important at the end of the day. So in terms of supporting the taxonomy, we've published it now, and we have some materials on our website about digital financial reporting, and we'll be aiming to support understanding and capacity building in the market about our taxonomy and digital reporting.
So we encourage listeners to check out our digital financial reporting webpage, which contains the educational materials that Sue already referred to. You can find some introductory materials, and we also have implementation guides for the experts, perhaps looking for more comprehensive materials. I know it's early days, but do you already have initial thoughts, Sue, on the next steps?
Oh, I always have thoughts, you know me. But it's early days, but we have a quite well-established taxonomy due process. And as for the IASB, the ISSB will update our taxonomy periodically to reflect any new standards, amendments to the standards, and also to capture common reporting practice and emerging reporting issues. And earlier you referred to the ISSB taxonomy, and we will aim to update the ISSB taxonomy to reflect the updated ISSB standards, which were updated as a result of the work that we did last year to improve the international applicability in those standards, and we hope to do that later in 2024. And naturally, we'll also be talking to regulators and other stakeholders about the ISSB taxonomy as part of the work that we're doing to support the adoption of the ISSB standards. And last, but certainly not least, we'll be continuing to consider interoperability with the work of others when that's relevant. So, for example, part of the work on interoperability that we're doing with our European counterparts on European sustainability reporting standards is considering the interoperability of our respective taxonomies, building on the interoperability guidance on the standards that we're currently finalising. So more to come, and watch this space. And with that, thank you very much for watching.